Hey guys, Wyatt Claypool here. Did you catch that English leaders debate last night? Because I did. And while Pierre Poilievre may want to keep murderers locked up for the rest of their lives in prison, he seems to have made an exception for himself because he murdered Mark Carney on stage. That was a brutal performance by Mark Carney. And there are already leftists online and on television basically explaining that this debate really didn't matter that much, that nobody's going to remember it. And they're saying that because they know that they cannot actually spin Mark Carney's performance as anything but terrible, they're just hoping that nobody noticed how bad it was. So today I want to do a review of the debate, go over some of the polling that came out right afterwards of people who had actually watched it. I want to give the leaders letter grades, and then I want to discuss how this is going to affect the election going forward. We have early voting starting today, and it's going to go on until Monday, or I believe Sunday. So guys, make sure you go out and vote early. There are low propensity voters out there who are going to be less likely to wait 45 minutes in line to vote. So if you vote now, it means that those low propensity conservative voters on election day are actually going to stick it through in more like a 20-minute line and cast a ballot for Pierre Poilievre and the conservatives. But anyways, before I get into the debate, I just want to remind you guys, if you like my federal election coverage, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel if you are not yet a subscriber, and leave a comment. How do you think the leaders did? Give me your letter grades for Carney, Poilievre, Blanchet, and Singh. I'm going to start off with the letter grades, and then I'm going to explain why. I kind of buried the lead in the French debate yesterday, so I'll just start off with it right away now. If I am giving a letter grade to Pierre Poilievre, although I am a conservative supporter and it kind of sounds like not much coming from me, I give him an A+. That was an excellent performance. For the record, I gave him a B- for the French debate. And I think I was vindicated in saying that he seemed to be pulling punches at the French debate because there wasn't much to gain in Quebec. Even if the Conservatives gained 5% in Quebec, they would literally win no extra seats. The conservative regions of Quebec are very solid for the Conservatives, but outside of those areas, the Conservatives are coming in like distant fourth or even fifth places oftentimes. So if he really ripped the hinges off the doors for the Quebec debate, what's he doing? Making it so that he wins the Beauce by more, firming up the two Quebec City ridings that the Conservatives win. It didn't really matter that much to Poilievre. So why telegraph what you're going to hit Carney with in the English debate during the French debate? Just play coy, be nice, don't lean into anything that would, basically play up to what the media tries to make him out to be. Don't be too pugilistic or pugnacious so that the media can't say, oh, look, he's mini Trump, just as we've been saying. So I thought Poilievre in this debate was excellent. A+, he was aggressive but positive, amazing. Mark Carney. Let's actually save Mark Carney for the end. Blanchet. I would say that he is the second place winner of this debate. I wouldn't give him an A, but I would give him a B+. He was great at being an attack dog for Quebec against Mark Carney. He hit Poilievre a little bit here. He would sometimes slap Jagmeet Singh. But for the most part, I think he understands that the Bloc Québécois survival relies on the Liberals falling apart in Quebec and not winning any of the Bloc Québécois Montreal suburbs. Because the Liberals are just the party of Montreal and Quebec. They don't actually have that many ridings outside of Montreal. So for Mark Carney to win this election, he would need to basically expand into all these Bloc Québécois areas. There's actually not many parts of the province where the Liberals beat the Conservatives. It's mostly Liberals versus Bloc, sometimes Liberals versus NDP, and then it's Bloc versus Conservative. And so basically Blanchet just ripped the bark off of Mark Carney, basically tried to expose him as not being very friendly to Quebec. He's giving money to the Ontario auto industry while he gives nothing to the Quebec aluminum industry and other things that they're doing in Quebec. I don't follow the Quebec economy that closely, but in general, he seemed like he did a good job. So I would give him a B+. I think he helped himself out. I think he is going to be gaining votes for the Bloc Québécois in Quebec off of that performance, even though it's in English. Because Quebec voters like when the BQ leader goes to the English debates and then just very, sanctimoniously stands up for Quebec. So he did a good job in that sense. Jagmeet Singh. I gave him on my live stream yesterday an F, and I'm actually reconsidering. Was Jagmeet Singh the most annoying person in the debate? Absolutely. He gets the most annoying leaders award from me. Based on my own personal enjoyment watching him, I give him an F because he was he was awful. He was annoying, he was obnoxious, he was every other word for like horrible and like grating. He is terrible. But if you are on the left wing of Canadian politics, you probably thought that Jagmeet Singh was really taking it to Mark Carney and Poilievre. He would cut people off constantly, but maybe that's what Jagmeet Singh needs at this point. He just needs attention. And so, I'm going to give him, I hate to do this, I give him a C minus because while Mark Carney was being systematically blown up by Pierre Poilievre was doing like a controlled demolition job, and Jagmeet Singh was like constantly jumping up saying, I have something to say about that. Hey, Poilievre, have you ever considered, hey, Mark, have you ever considered healthcare? Hey, Poilievre, Gaza exists. It was terrible, but if you're on the left and Mark Carney is being destroyed, maybe because he's getting himself some attention and he seems like he's always in there and he's annoying Poilievre, you might get some people who were originally going to go from the NDP to the Liberals to come back home to the NDP. Maybe he can get himself to like 12 or 13% in the polls off of this debate performance. And now Marcus Julius Carney. I don't actually know what his middle name is. I'm just going to call him Julius because he was assassinated in that debate like he was Julius Caesar. All the other leaders basically just stabbed him to death. Steve Paikin was just sitting there, the moderator, horrified as his entire political career came unraveled within 2 hours. It was actually that bad. People will pretend like, no, he mostly was able to defend himself. That's what I saw from CTV News. That's what Thomas Mulcair was saying. And I usually actually like Thomas Mulcair, even though he's NDP, former NDP leader. He can be reasonable. He even defended Poilievre for not taking the security clearance for good reason. And he said like, oh, well, Carney was able to mostly slough off all the attacks. No, unless taking direct hits is a defense, unless he is defending himself from Poilievre's punches by absorbing them all into his stomach and hoping it doesn't kill him. No, he didn't. He lost so hard. I give Mark Carney a D minus. That was an awful debate. I'm going to go into some clips in a bit here. He looked like a disappointed lizard as the debate went on. He just kind of had this, like he'd be like checking his notes. He'd be like looking away from Poilievre every time he was being attacked because you could see he was like, where is my butler to tell this man to stop talking to me? He just seemed peevish, sensitive, thin-skinned, and overly rehearsed. Everything he said was just an overly rehearsed line or him fumbling all over himself to trying to respond to an attack. This is why in the French debate, he basically just stuck to talking about Trump because the man cannot defend himself. He has to go on the offense against somebody else. And Trump's an easy target because Trump's not there to defend himself. In the one instance, he actually tried to attack Poilievre. He actually turned it into the best counterpunch I've ever seen from a politician. He hit him on not getting his security clearance, Poilievre, and Poilievre turned that into a, hey, you know that Paul Chang guy that you refused to get rid of after he called for a conservative candidate to be locked up by the Chinese Communist Party? I wouldn't even be able to talk about that if I had gotten the security clearance based on the absurd rules that the Liberal government put into place. But now, guys, we are going to watch some of these clips because they are glorious. These are hilarious. Again, it's not one of those debates where Mark Carney's hair is going to start on fire and his pants are going to fall down. And he looks like a complete idiot. People almost see bad debate performances through the lens of Joe Biden literally falling apart on stage against Donald Trump. That's not what a typical bad debate performance looks like. Remember, John Turner in 1984 got just demolished by Brian Mulroney over the "you had a choice" attack line that he was using. There's been a lot of other good moments in debates that ended up helping out a party a lot. I think the no two-tier healthcare moment from Stockwell Day in 2000 really helped the Alliance Party in that election, even though they didn't end up winning. But that was a good moment. I've seen good moments in debates before. Mark Carney had no good moments. And in fact, he was very awkward. When I saw statistics on how few people watched the entire thing all the way through, I think it's because mostly liberals stopped watching because it wasn't very good to watch. Anyway, so here is the first clip I want to show you, and then I'm going to switch over to X where there's a lot more bite-sized clips that I have bookmarked. But here is one of the best moments in my opinion. This is the moment of the debate where Mark Carney wrecked hard and never recovered.
Mr. Singh, sorry, he has the floor.
The question you have to ask is, after a decade of liberal promises, can you afford food? Is your housing more affordable than it used to be? What is your cost of living like compared to what it was a decade ago? And are you prepared to elect the same liberal MPs, the same liberal ministers, the same liberal staffers all over again for a fourth term? Mr. Carney, Justin Trudeau's staffers are actually here with you at this debate in Montreal, writing the talking points that you are regurgitating into the microphone. How can we possibly believe that you are any different than the previous 10 years of Liberal government?
25 seconds left in this segment for you to respond to that.
That is a brilliant moment. That is like TLC drama kind of dumping on Carney. If you didn't notice, and I want to show you Mark Carney trying to respond to that. But Blanchet, you may have heard him say this in the background. I'll even back it up by 10 seconds. As Poilievre is landing this absolutely amazing attack, like a fully loaded 7047 Superliner or whatever, massive airplane, Blanchet is literally going like, ooh, ouch, that hurts. Like, because he knows that this is a horrible, horrible, scathing attack on Carney as basically being a fake, being moved around by the exact same staffers that Justin Trudeau was being moved around by.
How can we possibly believe that you are any different?
You could literally hear him say, that's painful. Brilliant.
Than the previous 10 years of Liberal government.
25 seconds left in this segment for you to respond to that.
Look, I do my own talking points. Thank you very much. The biggest risk we have to affordability, the biggest risk we have to this economy is Donald Trump. So first and foremost, we've got to get that right. Secondly, we need to do it in a way that brings everyone along together. That means preserving pharmacare, dental care, child care, reinforcing health care, spending our
intrusion in Quebec jurisdiction over and again. I like
the clock is on.
And then you have Blanchet coming over the top rope just to even interrupt Mark Carney's fairly lackluster response to Poilievre. That's what Mark Carney would do constantly during the debate. You don't need to see all of his responses, but what he would do is someone would ask him a tough question, whether it was Poilievre, Singh, or Blanchet, that he didn't have a good answer for. So he would filibuster. So he would talk about how the real threat, pregnant pause, is Donald John Trump and the Republicans in the US. And it would be like taking forever to say nothing just to try and run out the clock. He even had to do that with the attack question he asked Poilievre about the security clearance. He needed to run out the clock during his own segment because of how poorly it went for him. Now I want to bring up some of the other moments from the debate. I'm going to start off with a moment that was bad, not even for the viciousness of the attack made on Carney, but for Carney's own words being complete gibberish. He starts referencing the success of the Keystone XL pipeline, a pipeline that the Liberal government killed and has never been built.
Secondly, recognizing that the biggest component of that was the cost of building Keystone. Keystone, which is the pipeline which has helped to increase oil and gas oil exports rather by 50% in this country. That is an asset of the people of Canada. We own it. And the question of what to do it. So it's not a subsidy that has disappeared. It's actually an asset of Canada.
He didn't know the difference. I believe it's between Keystone XL and Northern Gateway. He literally did not understand the difference. The man keeps mentioning the fact that he was born in the Northwest Territories and grew up in Edmonton. And he does not know the difference between a pipeline that exists and a pipeline that has attempted to be done before and kept getting killed by the Liberal government. A project that he in the past has stumped against. Now, let's move on to another moment. Let's go to Yves-François Blanchet slamming Carney. Again, this was just Julius Caesar being stabbed to death on the Senate floor in Rome.
I want to know, will you, before the election, reveal all the details of your assets, as Mr. Singh has done, as Mr. Poilievre has done, and as I have done. We have a right
Okay,
to
let's
know
let him answer.
under those circumstances.
Let's let him answer.
Well, the first thing is I want to say a word about, I'll say a word about Brookfield.
He's going to filibuster.
This is a Canadian success story. It is the largest infrastructure investor and developer in the world. It is one of the largest, if not the largest, developer of renewable power in the world. And who benefits from that? That's Canadian pensioners. That's Quebec pensioners. That is teachers. That firefighters. It is a series of people, including individuals on this stage, benefit from that. Now, always acted with integrity, served the shareholders of Brookfield when I was there. I have left that. I have followed all the rules well in advance.
So let's
I have followed
reveal
all
your
the
assets.
rules well in
Let's
advance.
reveal your assets like
And-
we all did.
And working for the people of Canada.
What do you own? Why
that is
don't
time,
you tell
gentlemen.
Canadians and
That is
Quebecers
time.
what you own?
Monsieur Blanchet, we're
Notice how whenever another leader is addressing Carney or even being addressed, they actually have body language that symbolizes a certain sense of strength. That when Poilievre is talking to another leader, or Blanchet in that clip is talking to Carney, he might look down his notes and be taking a note quickly, but you can tell he's not burying his face in it because he doesn't want to look up. He then later moves over and confidently looks at him across the way. Carney, as this debate is going on, if you watched it live, you'll notice he's constantly looking away. And he's constantly getting very small and tight around his podium because he's not confident. You think this guy is going to negotiate with Donald Trump and do anything but lose? He's a complete dullard. He's terrible on camera. Here's another one. This is I want to jump over to this one. This is the security clearance backfiring. This is one of the worst moments for Carney in the entire debate. I'll just bring this up on screen.
Have got my security clearance when I was a minister. I got top secret clearance at the time, so there's no problem getting that. But when the government made this recent offer, they said that if I got the security clearance briefings, that I would be gagged under the security law, and I could be prosecuted if I spoke freely about matters of foreign interference. Now, given that Canada has experienced Chinese interference by Beijing, the government of China, in 2 consecutive elections, I needed to do my job to speak freely without fear of prosecution. And that was not something I would be allowed to do. Even Thomas Mulcair, the former leader of the NDP, said that when he was the leader of the opposition, he never would have accepted the kind of gag order that your government and Mr. Trudeau's government was attempting to impose on me. And it's good that I made that decision because it has allowed me to speak freely about things like the case where one of your candidates, sir.
You can tell that Carney probably knew this wasn't going well already because, again, he started having that disappointed lizard face where he just kind of looks like he hates being there and he wishes he was anywhere else.
Actually said that he wanted to send a political opponent to China under a bounty threatening his life or imprisonment, and you refused to get rid of him. Now, it might have something to do with the fact that you went to China not long ago to get a $250 million loan for your company. But the reality is you refused to stand up for a Canadian who was being threatened by a foreign government. And I was able to speak freely on that matter because I refused the gag order that the Liberal government attempted to impose on me.
Well, there's a couple of interesting things. I think people at home have seen
have got mine.
By the way, the last 13 seconds of his timer there, it didn't go to anything. Carney just filibustered again. He tried to, at the very end, but he got cut off, tried to bring up, well, there's other countries that are trying to interfere into Canada. And he was going to try and pivot to India, imply that Poilievre is an asset of the Indian government. Pathetic. It's just a weak, placid attack. That's all you would have to say. That's all you can say about Mark Carney's entire performance. It's placid. It started off, when I say strong, I just mean in terms of the amount it was highlighted, was they talked about Trump a lot at the start. Poilievre was very good at the beginning, where I'm not sure if I have this clip. It doesn't really matter. But Poilievre was very good at the beginning for going over the issue of Trump and making it very, he basically took the issue of Trump and made it a failure of the Liberals. If you're scared of Trump, if you think he's going to harm Canada, if you think Canada's vulnerable, well, who made us vulnerable? It wasn't Trump in the last few months. It's been the Liberals for 10 years. He did very well on that one. And I noticed that after that question, we saw a spike in Trump references until Poilievre spoke, and then they started going down because it just wasn't a good attack line, because Poilievre dominated it so early on that he wanted to talk about literally anything else. Here's maybe another good clip we can watch. I'm trying to give you guys a good overview of what had happened without just showing you the entire debate.
Well, Mr. Carney refused to answer the question about pipelines. Just the other day, he said that he doesn't necessarily think we need to build pipelines. Let me tell you what that means. Right now, the Americans get 97% of our oil, 100% of our natural gas exports at big discounts. We have to send Canadian oil from Western Canada through the States just to get it back to Quebec because we don't have a pipeline. And now there's this law, Liberal Law C-69, which effectively bans pipelines. The 14 biggest energy and resource companies say it has to go if we're ever going to build another project. And I asked Mr. Carney why he would keep in place this anti-pipeline law that effectively empowers Donald Trump to have a total monopoly on our single biggest export. Why would you not repeal this Liberal law? Isn't it because you are exactly the same in the same line as Justin Trudeau and the rest of the Liberal team?
That's a great pause screen right there. Just Carney looking on, trying to not make eye contact with Pierre Poilievre. I don't think that Carney maybe made eye contact with Poilievre outside of passing glances while he was talking about him, but then quickly moved on. Because again, it is one of those telltale signs that somebody knows that they're losing, is that they can't even look them in the eye, because that person is aggressive and strong, and I am weak and pathetic. So if I look at them, I am going to freak myself out. It was so bad. And Poilievre throughout it had that good body language. The pattern was that he would basically punch Mark Carney, give him an uppercut at the start of a question or at the start of a statement. He would just pound on Carney for a few seconds. And then he would move back over and talk about the vision he has for Canada. Obviously, there was moments where he was just in full attack mode because that was what the part of the debate called for. But he was really good at jabbing, but then giving the positive vision. Jabbing, positive vision. And it kills off the media narrative that he is Trump-like. He's just a mean, pugnacious attack dog. Because he wasn't. He was critical, but then he was constructive. That was what worked. Remember, going into this debate, more than a third of Liberal supporters, people currently saying they're going to vote for the Liberal Party, are soft Liberals, in the sense that they are not definitely going to show up and vote Liberal. That's what the Angus Reid polls have been showing, that 80% of Conservatives say they're definitely voting Conservative, but only 63% of Liberals say they're definitely voting Liberal. This was a performance that I think is going to cause a lot of people who were previously voting NDP in past elections to go back NDP, or people who were going to migrate from the Conservatives to the Liberals to come back towards the Conservatives, or just stay home because, my goodness, that was crap. Because they probably are not feeling super confident about showing up for the central banker after he can't even stand up to his opposition leader, who he's claiming can't stand up to Trump. If you can't stand up to Poilievre, who you claim won't stand up to Trump, well, then how do you stand up to Trump? It, doesn't really make much sense. Now, I just want to jump over to Jagmeet Singh being the most annoying person on the planet. Here's just 19 seconds, or I'll play a couple clips of it. It was hard to sit through because, again, maybe this works for certain people, but you literally could not sometimes hear what another leader was saying over the sounds of Jagmeet Singh just chirping from the background.
Now, well, Mr. Carney has temporarily
But you know the answer.
hidden the
You don't know the
carbon
answer
tax.
either. You're just throwing out random
thousands of
Just
dollars.
making it up, though. You don't
extra
know.
cost.
Let's let him
When you- when you
actually,
add-
I
when you
actually
add-
do know the answer to that question. He's wrong.
When you add
you-
taxes
No.
to steel, you raise the price of everything that uses steel. When you add everything,
It's a
taxes
straw man
to,
argument to say
to
you know
the
the price.
when
you
you
don't know the
add
price.
when you
don't know the
add
answer.
when
here
you
to-
add
he's here to
the
learn.
carbon tax onto the price of, for example, fertilizer, you increase the price of food. So while Mr. Carney has temporarily hidden the Liberal carbon tax at the pumps while keeping the tax fully in law, and planning to raise it after the election. He's also going after a tax on our industry that will ultimately be passed on to you.
I also thought Poilievre's defense of getting rid of the industrial carbon tax was very good. Right there, Jagmeet Singh and then also Mark Carney were trying to basically call him out because Poilievre had asked Carney, well, what is the price on a ton of steel or whatever from the industrial carbon tax? How much is the industrial carbon tax adding to the price of everyday necessities for Canadians? And they're saying, well, Poilievre, you don't know the exact number. So it's a stupid question. It's like, he doesn't need to know the exact number. The whole point is Poilievre knows that makes things more expensive. And Mark Carney doesn't want to admit that, which is why he wouldn't answer Poilievre. And only when they found this stupid gotcha that Jagmeet Singh and Carney start like sitting up and saying, well, you don't know how much it adds either. Okay, the whole point is it adds. That's the thing that you guys don't want to admit to. Here's another clip of Jagmeet Singh not being able to shut up.
90% of guns that come in that are used in crime are smuggled illegally over the porous, liberal-run borders.
The border,
and that's why the police.
border officers.
It's not true, and that's
You
why
literally
the police.
cut the border officers
The police
in the
actually,
facts.
if I could, the police actually endorsed
do it
me.
again,
The police in Barrie, in Peel, in Sault Ste.
It was bad. And then when they were talking about climate or whatever, or they were talking about like pipelines, Poilievre was obviously talking about natural resource development, doing more oil and gas exploration, like starting more mines, building pipelines. And Jagmeet Singh kept like chirping in, well, you want people to pollute as much as they want whenever. It's like, Jagmeet, baby, stop speaking. We don't care. Again, maybe there are some like public sector workers who really thought Jagmeet Singh was doing something there, but my goodness, at least for me, it does not work at all. Well, now I want to jump over to some data that was put out yesterday by Abacus that I think proves that this was a significant debate. People can pretend, oh, it's not going to do much. People don't really care about the debates. They kind of do. Look at this. This was pre-debate. It says, which leader do you expect to do the best? In the French debate, obviously, it's Blanchet and Poilievre, who were scored at the top by people Abacus was pulling because, you know, Carney doesn't speak French very well, so they were expecting it was going to be one of the more fluent French speakers who was going to win. They also have Elizabeth May on here in the Greens, but they actually got cut from the debates. But English debate, 41% of people expected that Mark Carney was going to do the best, 34 Pierre Poilievre, Jagmeet Singh 6, Yves-François Blanchet 3, and don't know was 14%. Now let's jump up to this question. Which leader did more to win your vote? And this was after the debate. They asked people who they thought did the best. Of people who watched all of the debate, 47% thought Poilievre did the best. 37% thought Mark Carney did the best. 11% Singh, Blanchet 2, and none said 4. Or basically none of the leaders did well was 4%. The only area, Paul, if you watched some of it but not all, they were tied. If you watched a little, you had Mark Carney at 44 to 37. Now, you could say, well, that sucks because most people don't watch the entire debate. The difference is that in our world, people don't really sit down and watch the entire 2-hour debate unless you are psychos like myself who like to just watch through every debate that comes out. Even if it's in French, you'll listen to the English dub. The thing is that people consume debate through the clips, and the clips are terrible for Mark Carney. It shows that if people watched a little bit of it, they thought Carney was doing well. If they watched some of it, so let's say they watched a third of it, they watched 50% of it, they thought that they were about tied. If you watch the full thing, you were not under the impression that Carney was doing well at all. In fact, the people who turned off the debate early probably were liberals who knew it wasn't going well, so maybe we'll turn it off now and say that Carney was doing pretty good when I shut the TV off. Overall, Poilievre won it 43 to 40 with Jagmeet Singh at 11 and Yves-François Blanchet at 2. But you have to remember, it is very difficult for Poilievre to win a preferred prime minister poll when most people will say Mark Carney if they vote for any of the left parties rather than conservative. Poilievre actually won this metric. And again, as more people see more clips from this debate, it's going to shift quite a bit. Now, let's go down here. Impact of the debate. And so we have 71% of people say the debate did not change how you would plan to vote. And that makes sense. Most people tend to be pretty dogged with their choices. A lot of those are obviously conservatives who said, I wanted Poilievre before I walked in, and I still want him now. Now, 23% of people say the debate has made you rethink how you plan to vote. And then 4% says the debate has made you change how you plan to vote, and 2% says the debate has made you decide not to vote at all. Now, maybe I'm making a foolish assumption here, but I'm going to assume that the 29% of people who are considering changing who they're voting for, or have changed, or they're not going to vote at all, are not leaning conservative. I assume it's mostly people leaning liberal or NDP. I thought the Bloc did quite well, so I actually think they probably firmed up many of their supporters who ended up watching in English just for the love of the game. But this is telling. This is also, remember, that only 20% of conservatives were not definitely going to be voting conservative. They were somewhere on the spectrum of, fairly certain or maybe not certain quite yet. But liberals had more than a third of their people not willing to show up. Again, who do you think supporters, based on that debate performance and how they went into the debate, were more likely to flip? I am going to posit that it was the liberals who were far more likely to flip. And now we have new polling results coming out today, and I don't need to go over those because they were polls conducted before the debate. Before the debate, in Main Street Research, the conservatives are around 1 point down. In Abacus data, they're only 2 points down, and actually when you add confidence intervals to it, the conservatives are leading by 1. Liaison, which has not been friendly to the conservatives, but has been showing them gaining some momentum, they're only 2 points down. Even Ecos only has the conservatives 8 points down, which sounds like a lot, but they're also the pollster that at different times has had them down 16 points. So if Ecos thinks that the liberals are leading by 8, it probably means that it's conservatives leading by 1 or 2 because of just how bad their samples are. Considering how tight it is, and the conservatives only need to win by a couple points to form a minority government, that debate is going to change a lot of people's minds in the conservative direction. In ridings where it was going to only be decided by 2 or 3 points, you only need that election, that debate, to flip 200 people in a riding from liberal to conservative to have a big swing in favor of the conservative and have the conservative now winning by 4 or 5 points. This will matter. And again, I've gone through the simulator on 338 Canada. The conservatives, especially if the Bloc start doing well in Quebec, can win the election without even getting the plurality of the vote. They can literally lose the popular vote to the liberals if the Bloc Québécois is doing well enough in Quebec and still win the election. So anyways, that should be it for me today, guys. Oh, actually, no, it's not up for me today, guys. I'm baiting you. So anyone who survived me saying that briefly, you're a true hero because I needed to show you something else. So I want to cut to something that proves that Mark Carney did really bad. We're going to first start off with the mainstream media, who just outright admitted that, yes, this was, in fact, a bad debate for Mark Carney, and Pierre Poilievre won. Andrew Coyne, Chantal Hubert, and the other lady here, who's like an NDP stalwart, they will not admit Poilievre has ever done something well in his entire life. And even here, they were willing to say he did a good job.
It's okay, but particularly on this question of admitting the rebel news, et cetera, into this thing, I think we've now seen the last nail in the coffin of any.
Oh, I think this is the wrong clip. No, I need to find the other clip where they admitted that he was right. Sorry, there's a lot of clips out there. Here we go.
Ever made some yards. I think he had a good night. He looked focused. He was confident. He was fluent. He presented his case well. He was not just a critic, but also outlining his own plan. So I think by the normal standards of how you judge these debates, I think he had a good night.
Yeah, and I do agree with Andrew that Pierre Poilievre had a good night. But
his goal was to sound more prime ministerial and look less like an attack dog that we've come to know in the House of Commons. And I do think that he succeeded in that.
See, even they know Poilievre did a good job. Now I want to show you something that I think proves even more that he did a good job. And that is Mr. Frank Dominic, one of our favorite leftist TikTokers, saying that the debate was mid. The debate didn't really matter that much. If you think this debate did not matter very much, it's probably because it did matter. Would you waste your time making a video saying the debate was mid if it was actually mid? No, you just wouldn't talk about it because it would be boring. You're talking about it being mid and the fact it doesn't matter because, in fact, it actually does really matter.
Here's how you know that Pierre Poilievre is desperate. Every time that Singh or Blanchet would ask him a question or would attack him, the moderator would then give him the ability to respond. And Pierre would then immediately pivot and look at Carney and start attacking Carney. He wouldn't even take the opportunity to respond to the people who attacked him in the first place.
Because it's Blanchet and Singh who are irrelevant to the Conservatives' path to victory.
Pierre is just scrambling and taking any opportunity to attack Carney, to do anything in his power to get sound bites that he can use in order to try to get any sort of momentum in the last couple days of this election. And I don't think it's working. He kept interrupting people during the debate, and he didn't necessarily crush it like he needed to. He didn't inherently do a bad job, but
it's because he did very well, Frank. Just say it. It's so liberating just to admit that he did a good job. I've even admitted when lefty politicians have debated well. Blanchet, in a lot of issues, except for immigration, is very left, but he did a good job at both the French and English debates.
But in order to make changes in the polls, he needed to do a great job, and I just don't think he did that. None of them really did a great job, to be perfectly honest. Like, none of them were awful either. It was mid.
It was mid. It was just a mid debate, guys. Nothing happened. It wasn't like we watched a murder on screen of Poilievre absolutely demolishing Mark Carney, because Mark Carney is a peevish, sensitive, thin-skinned man who didn't have anything good to say in the debate. He is not a good debater. He's not a good negotiator. And it was proven out on stage. Him saying, ooh, Poilievre's desperate, and that's why he wouldn't respond to Singh and Blanchet. Oh, yeah, Poilievre's desperate. That's why he's doing smart things and not answering the irrelevant leaders' questions and pivoting over to smacking the current Liberal government, because they are, in fact, the issue of the election. How incompetent the Liberal government has been. What does Poilievre have to gain by mocking Jagmeet Singh? Let Jagmeet Singh gain some votes. I don't care. Let him do it. Don't hurt Jagmeet Singh. He's a complete worthless bag of nothing on stage. Now, here is another video by Frank Dominic arguing that Mark Carney actually was doing quite well if you think about it.
The reason Mark Carney impressed during the debate wasn't any of his answers. It was how he handled his opponents.
So Mark Carney did really well. And the caveat here is, he did really well, not because of any of the answers, not because of anything that actually happened in the debate, but he handled people well. How can he handle people well if his answers aren't good?
There was maybe one or two moments where he got flustered, but almost always if somebody was interrupting him or if somebody was berating him, he would just say, please let me finish. Or he would in some other way give them a platitude and be kind about it and just basically say hey, can I just get through this? And it almost always diffused the tension versus...
Sometimes Mark Carney said, lay off me, man. Oh, let me finish my sentence. That was a real sign of strength. Every once in a while, Mark Carney was, let me finish saying this, please. Let me finish. No, that's not. It's terrible.
This is the way the other leaders would approach that kind of stuff, usually escalated it or otherwise just had somebody else talking over them the whole time. And it kind of makes sense now as to why Carney was able to have a decent conversation with Trump. He obviously knows how to handle difficult people in difficult situations. And I think that that's a skill that he gained as the governor of the Bank of Canada and the Bank.
What is he talking about? The governor of the Bank of Canada, Bank of England has trained him to deal with difficult people. That is... on the social level, it's a fairly easy job to be the governor of the Bank of Canada or England. There are a lot of skills that go into that job, but it's not exactly like a hot-blooded social job. This is why he got along well with Trump. If Poilievre got along well with Trump, you would be crying like bloody havoc.
Bank of England. Now, let me be clear. A lot of his answers during the debate were kind of crap. There were some questions that he tried to dodge masterfully, and it came off pretty sleazy. Like during the one-on-one, there was a point where he was very obviously running up the clock. But when we talk about what we want from a world leader on the world stage,
he was running up the clock in every debate. So Frank will kind of admit the truth, but then he'll temper it by saying, oh, well, yeah, okay, he was crappy and he had terrible answers and he looked like garbage and he reminded me of beige wallpaper. But if you think about it, that's exactly what people want.
Being able to handle difficult people is probably a top priority. How do you think Carney did during the debate? Leave your thoughts in the comments down below.
Bad, Frank. He did badly. What? I I also don't understand the way that these TikTokers make videos. They'll I mug a little bit. I'm filming myself talking for 40 minutes. I'm going to get a little silly. Frank Dominic's making videos that are a minute. And he's constantly to emphasize his point. He mugs so much in place of an argument or in place of some sort of he'll make a snide remark and then kind of push up his eyebrows a little bit. And that's it's his style. I don't know. This is apparently what sells on TikTok. Yeah, he did bad. Everyone knows he did bad. That's why the debate commission canceled the Q&A. It had nothing to do with Rebel News. It had nothing to do with True North or Juno or Western Standard. It had to do with the fact that Mark Carney got destroyed so bad they needed any excuse to cancel the Q&A. There's a reason why Carney's people after the debate were so agitated, because it was not good and they knew they were in crisis mode. That was another word that Carney liked using a lot during the debate. I think everyone was talking about how he would talk about how we need to deal with the crisis fundamentally from the point of view that we need to catalyze investment in Canada. He repeats himself so often, I don't see people really attaching themselves to him because he feels like a walking script. And that's it. As Poilievre pointed out, he's in fact just the walking mannequin for the Liberal scriptwriters. So that's it for me today, guys. Remember, if you like my videos, like the video, or we're very redundant. If you like the channel, like this video. And if you are not yet a subscriber, please subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to get to 100,000 subscribers by mid-December of this year, as well as leave a comment. Again, who would you give what letter grade to? I gave Poilievre an A plus maybe. I gave Blanchet a B plus. I gave Jagmeet Singh a C minus and Mark Carney a D minus. So other than that, I will see you guys next time.